Zuri was full of joy. Her wedding day had finally come, a day she had dreamed about for years. The garden was set beautifully in Nairobi, decorated with her favorite flowers. Friends and family had flown in, music was playing softly, and Zuri was glowing in her white gown. She had worked so hard to make everything perfect. She was marrying Kwesi, the man she had loved for nearly a decade. They had met in university, grown together, and supported each other through thick and thin. Everyone called them the perfect couple. But just a few hours before the ceremony, everything fell apart. Zuri overheard whispers from one of the bridesmaids. At first, she thought it was a joke. But the truth hit her like a truck. Kwesi wasn't marrying her anymore. He was marrying someone else. And not just anyone, her own cousin Aking. Zuri couldn't breathe. She rushed outside, hoping it was all a misunderstanding. But there under the arch she had decorated herself stood Aking in a white dress. Kwesi held her hand like nothing was wrong. Guests clapped. Cameras flashed. It was real. Her heart broke in slow motion. No one explained anything. Her family avoided eye contact. Some guests looked at her with pity, others looked away. She wasn't the bride anymore, she was a ghost at her own wedding. The betrayal wasn't private. It wasn't quiet. It was a public humiliation, and it came from the two people she trusted the most. Zuri didn't scream. She didn't cry in front of them. She just stood there frozen, with a pain so deep it almost didn't feel real. Her perfect beginning had turned into a nightmare, one she would never forget. Zuri stood in the shadows, wearing the wedding gown she had chosen with so much love. The dress that once made her feel like a queen now felt like a cruel joke. Just a few meters away, the celebration went on without her. Laughter, music, camera flashes, it was everything she had planned, but for someone else. Her cousin, Aking, now stood where Zuri was meant to be. And Kwesi, the man Zuri had called her soulmate, smiled proudly beside her. Zuri's heart was breaking, but her family told her not to make a scene. Stay quiet. For your dignity, they whispered. Don't ruin the day. Ruin the day? It was already ruined for her. But somehow they acted like she was the problem. Like her silence would save face. So she stood there, hiding behind a pillar, watching as her dream was handed to someone else by the very people she trusted. Every detail around her was a painful reminder. She had chosen the flowers. She had picked the songs. She had spent nights designing the arch with her own hands. And now Aking stood beneath it, smiling in her stolen moment. Zuri wanted to run, to scream, to ask someone, anyone, why this was happening. But no one met her eyes. It was like she had disappeared. A photographer almost turned his lens toward her, but someone waved him away. Don't take pictures of her, they whispered. Like she was ashamed to be hidden. Zuri felt like a shadow in her own story. The dress clung to her like a second skin, heavy with humiliation. She had never felt more alone. As the crowd cheered for the new couple, Zuri quietly stepped back, tears slipping down her face. No one followed her. No one stopped her. It was like the world had moved on without her. But deep inside, something was shifting. A spark. A quiet fire. They had humiliated her, but they had no idea who they were breaking. Not yet. That night, while the music still played and the last guests danced under fairy lights, Zuri slipped away quietly. No goodbye. No shouting. No revenge speech. She packed a small bag, took off her wedding gown, and walked out of the life that had betrayed her. Nairobi, the city that once held all her dreams, now felt like a place she had to escape. And so she vanished. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. She turned off her phone, deleted all her social media, and cut ties with everyone, even the people who meant well but stayed silent when it mattered most. Zuri needed to disappear, not just from the world, but from the pain. From the headlines. From the whispers. From the shame. She boarded a bus to Kisumu, a city by the lake she had only visited once as a child. It wasn't part of any plan, she just needed somewhere new, somewhere quiet, where no one knew her name or her story. In Kisumu, she found a small room to rent, barely furnished, but it was enough. It was hers. And for the first time in days, she breathed. At first, the silence was hard. The nights were heavy. She cried herself to sleep more times than she could count. But slowly, something started to shift. She woke up one morning and Googled business classes for women. Not to forget the past, but to rebuild from it. Zuri found a local business incubator for women entrepreneurs and signed up the same day. She showed up to her first class in jeans and a t-shirt, with nothing but a notebook and a broken heart. But as the days passed, she started learning. Branding. Marketing. Strategy. The same drive that once planned a perfect wedding now fueled something deeper, her future. She didn't post online. She didn't try to explain anything. While others talked, Zuri built. Quietly. Fiercely. She was no longer the woman they left at the altar. She was becoming someone new, someone stronger. And no one saw it coming. Months went by and Zuri made a choice. She would not let that day define her. Yes, she had been broken. Yes, she had been humiliated. But she refused to stay stuck in that pain. Every morning she woke up early, attended her business classes, and poured all her emotions into learning. Branding, strategy, storytelling, she soaked it all in like her life depended on it. Because in many ways it did. There were days she doubted herself. Days she stared at a blank screen, wondering if she was enough. But then she'd remember the girl in the wedding dress standing in the shadows. She never wanted to feel that powerless again. And she didn't want any other woman to feel that way either. That's when the idea for Reclaim was born. It started with a simple thought. What if broken women could take back their power? Zuri knew how it felt to be tossed aside, to be silenced, to be treated like she didn't matter. But she also knew what it felt like to rise. She wanted to create a space for women like her. Women who had been abandoned, betrayed, or overlooked, to find their voice again. She designed the brand herself, late at night with soft music playing and tears sometimes rolling down her cheeks. The logo was a cracked crown. Not broken, just bent, worn with strength. She wrote every line of the website with raw honesty. No sugarcoating. Just truth. Reclaim wasn't just about products. It was about power. She started with journals, affirmations, bold statement t-shirts. Each item carried messages of healing and courage. Slowly, women began to find her. Women who had been cheated on. Women who had walked away from toxic homes. Women who had been told they were too loud, too soft, too much. Zuri built a small team of women, most of them survivors of heartbreak just like her. Together, they created more than a brand. They created a movement. And with every sale, with every message from a customer saying, "Thank you." 2 years after disappearing from the public eye, Zuri returned, not quietly, but with power. One simple photo, one bold caption, and the internet couldn't stop talking. She stood tall in a sharp white suit, her natural hairstyle proudly, her eyes calm but fierce. The caption read, "They replaced me at the altar. I replaced them in my story." That was all. But it was more than enough. Within minutes, the post went viral. People who remembered the wedding scandal were shocked. Others who had no idea who she was quickly caught up. Screenshots were shared across WhatsApp, Instagram, and Twitter. Comments poured in thousands within the hour. Some were cheering her on. Others were in disbelief. But one thing was clear. Zuri was no longer the broken woman hiding in the shadows. The hashtag Reclaim Zuri started trending by nightfall. People wanted to know everything. Who was she now? What had she been doing all this time? Where did she go after that wedding day disaster? Zuri didn't rush to explain. She let the photo speak. She let the caption breathe. The power wasn't in what she said, it was in what she had become. Behind the scenes, her business had been growing quietly. Reclaim had touched lives, one order at a time. But this moment? This was her public rebirth. Media outlets picked up the story. Podcasts reached out. Women everywhere began using the hashtag to share their own stories of betrayal, healing, and strength. Young girls posted photos and reclaimed t-shirts with captions like, "I reclaim my voice." Survivors of heartbreak and abuse posted videos thanking Zuri for showing them what it means to rise. Influencers, celebrities, and even a few global brands reposted her photo. Suddenly, Zuri wasn't just a woman with a past, she was a symbol of comeback. And through it all, she stayed calm. She didn't trash anyone. She didn't name names. She didn't have to. Her glow said it all. She had turned pain into power. The universe has a wild sense of humor. And Zuri knew it better than anyone. 2 years after being left at the altar, she opened her email one morning and nearly dropped her coffee. It was a business proposal. From Queasy and Aching. They had started a small clothing line, now struggling and almost bankrupt. And guess who they wanted to collaborate with? Reclaim. They had no idea who ran it. Zuri stared at the email for a long time. Part of her wanted to delete it and move on. But another part, the part that had once cried in a wedding dress, told her this moment had arrived for a reason. So she replied, "Let's meet in Kampala. You can pitch your idea." They showed up to the meeting all smiles, pretending to be polished professionals. Queasy wore a cheap suit. Aking had on oversized sunglasses. They didn't recognize Zuri right away. Not dressed in power, not glowing the way she did now. And she didn't rush to reveal herself either. She let them talk. They pitched. They begged. They tried to impress her team. What they didn't know was that hidden cameras were rolling. The meeting room was being recorded live for a reclaimed documentary on women entrepreneurs. And when Zuri finally spoke, her voice was calm but ice cold. "Interesting pitch," she said. "But before we continue, I just have one question. Did you think I wouldn't recognize the two people who replaced me at the altar?" Silence. Queasy's face dropped. Aking's mouth opened, but no words came out. The air in the room changed instantly. And Zuri? She didn't flinch. She reached into her folder and pulled out printed screenshots. Old messages, lies, betrayals. She placed them on the table like evidence in court. "You wanted to collaborate? With the brand I built from the ashes you left me in." No one spoke. The room went quiet, except for the cameras still rolling. Zuri didn't scream. She didn't insult them. She smiled and simply said, "Thank you for your time." The room was packed. Influencers, business leaders, young women from across East Africa, all gathered for Reclaim's first ever live pitch event in Kampala. No one knew what was about to happen. Not even Zuri's own team. Cameras were set up to capture what was supposed to be a showcase of women-led businesses. But Zuri had something else planned, something no one would forget. When Queasy and Aking walked in, still pretending to be confident, Zuri greeted them with a nod. No emotion. No anger. Just calm, focused power. They had no idea this would be their undoing. Zuri stepped on stage, microphone in hand. She began by thanking everyone for coming. Then she paused, pulled out a printed email, and said, "Today's first pitch comes from two entrepreneurs you might find familiar." Whispers spread across the room. Then she began to read word for word the same email Queasy and Aking had sent begging for a collaboration. Her voice was steady, her face unreadable, but her eyes burned with truth. She continued reading more, old messages, lies they had sent behind her back, fake apologies, and even an old thread where they joked about Zuri never bouncing back. People gasped. A few mouths dropped open. Some grabbed their phones and started recording. Zuri kept going. She listed the betrayals like facts, how they replaced her at the altar, how her family stood by silently, how they tried to ride on her success now that theirs had failed. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She was in complete control. And then came the moment that sealed it all. "I built this brand from my pain. I bled for it. I cried for it. And now you want in? You thought I would forget. But I didn't. And I won't." She looked at them, directly, without blinking, and smiled. "Your pitch is rejected." The crowd exploded. Some clapped, some stood. Cameras caught every second. Within hours, the video hit social media. And within one day, it went viral. Zuri had stayed quiet for a long time. But silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. After the viral pitch moment, she could have walked away with just her dignity. But she knew she deserved more than peace. She deserved justice. So she did what they never expected. She took them to court. Zuri filed a lawsuit against Queasy and Aking for financial fraud, emotional damages, and defamation. It wasn't just about the wedding anymore. It was about the money they stole from her when they were planning it. The lies they told to smear her name. The pain they caused so carelessly, all while pretending they were innocent. She came to court with receipts. Literal ones. Bank transfers. Fake invoices. Leaked messages. Even voice notes. While they tried to deny everything, Zuri's legal team dropped one piece of evidence after another like bombs. Queasy looked shaken from the first day in court. The charm he once wore like armor didn't work here. And Aking? She fumbled, lied, and got caught. She had forged several receipts, trying to cover up money they had taken from Zuri's joint wedding fund and used for their own honeymoon and business. She even used Zuri's name on documents without permission. The courtroom sat in stunned silence when the judge read the verdict. Zuri had won. All charges proven. She wasn't just telling the truth. She had proof of everything. Queasy was ordered to pay a huge settlement. He had to sell off his car, some land in Kiambu, and even closed his failing business to cover the cost. Aking wasn't as lucky. Forgery is a crime, and she was officially charged. Her name, once whispered with gossip, was now printed in headlines under the word fraud. Zuri didn't cheer. She didn't gloat. She walked out of court in a sleek black dress, sunglasses on, head held high, surrounded by women who had supported her from the beginning. Cameras flashed, but she didn't speak to them. She didn't have to. Justice had already spoken for her. Zuri's story had already touched thousands. But after the courtroom victory, it caught fire across the globe. What started as a heartbreak in Nairobi was now a movement the whole world couldn't ignore. International media outlets started calling her the woman who turned betrayal into a brand. Her face appeared in newspapers, online articles, and then the unthinkable, on the cover of African Vogue. There she was, standing tall in a flowing golden dress, barefoot on red Kenyan soil with the headline, "From Broken to Billboard, Zuri's Rise." The photo went viral instantly. People across Africa and beyond shared it with words like power, grace, and unshakable. For girls who had grown up being told to stay quiet or move on after being wronged, Zuri became proof that you could speak up, fight back, and win. But she didn't stop there. She was invited to speak at the Women in Business Summit in Johannesburg. Thousands of women, from CEOs to students, packed the hall. When Zuri walked onto that stage wearing a suit that read "Reclaim" stitched into the sleeve, the crowd rose to their feet. She didn't read from a script. She spoke from her heart. About loss, shame, rebuilding, and choosing yourself even when the world turns its back. That speech was streamed across Africa and translated into 4 languages. People watched it in living rooms, classrooms, and hair salons. Many cried. Some cheered. One comment summed it up best. She didn't just reclaim her life. She reclaimed all of us. And then came her next move, the one that showed this was bigger than revenge or healing. Zuri launched a global initiative called Rise Before the Aisle. It was a support network for women who had been abandoned before marriage. A space for community, legal help, therapy, and financial literacy. It spread like wildfire. Chapters opened in Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, and even the UK. Women who once felt invisible were now seen. After everything, the heartbreak, the headlines, the courtroom, and the comeback, Zuri chose peace. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that trends. A quiet, sacred kind of peace that doesn't need to be posted. She married again. But this time it was different. No guests. No press. No fancy archway or crowd of strangers with cameras. Just Zuri, standing barefoot by the waters of Lake Victoria, holding hands with a kind, gentle architect from Ghana. A man who saw her soul before her scars. A man who never once asked her to shrink herself or forget her past. He loved every piece of her story, not in spite of it, but because of it. They said their vows with only the wind, the water, and the sky as witnesses. No drama. No stage. Just truth. After the ceremony, someone asked her, not as a journalist, but as a friend, if she ever forgave the people who tried to break her. Zuri smiled softly and said, "They gave me ashes. I built my empire from it." That was all she needed to say. She didn't need revenge anymore. She didn't need applause. She had built something real. Not just a business, not just a movement, but a life full of purpose, surrounded by people who truly saw her. In the end, Zuri's power wasn't in how loud she clapped back. It was in how quietly she healed, how deeply she grew, and how bravely she loved again. That was her final chapter. Not as a victim. Not even as a survivor. But as a woman fully, finally free.